Good morning, Alpha House. I certainly miss you, and I can't wait till we are together again. I would like to be able to put my arms around you and enjoy the Spirit of God in you, and as we build one another up and encourage one another. So from my house to yours, I encourage you today, and I want to speak from Colossians, actually quite a few scriptures today, and I apologize for that. But 6 years ago, I had some very difficult things in my life in the month of April. And I was reading Colossians at the time and made a lot of notes, put some dates. And so every year in April, I revisit Colossians to rehear what God was talking to me about then. Well, to walk in the Spirit, you must be able to hear the Spirit. And so, according to Ron Cottle, a professor that I have studied under, there are three large classes of people in the worldview of mankind. And those would be those who have heard the gospel, and whether it be with the written word available through hearing the gospel on radio, television, or some other way. Number two are those who have the written word. And number three, those who have neither the written word nor have heard the gospel. And those would be non-Jewish people, and those would be non-hearers. Now, each one of these groups of people will be judged according to the highest possible opportunity to know the gospel. Those of us that have the written word and hear the word, there is no excuse. For those that have the written word, there's still no excuse, because Scripture says that the law was good, but it was weak because men could not obey it and follow it. And then those who have neither the word nor the gospel have the written word in their conscience. And theoretically, if someone followed that and was a good person and always chose right, theoretically, that is responding to the word that's written in them, and they would be saved and be in heaven. However, that's not the case, because no man is good and no one can possibly do that. That's why Jesus came and did just that, to buy our ransom. So, hearing is important. Now, of the people in the first group that have heard the gospel, there are two kinds of hearers. There are the ear hearers and the heart hearers. Focusing on this first group, the heart hearers are akuo. That's what we read in James when it says, be doers of the word and not just hearers. And then there are the akroitis hearers, and those are ear hearers only. So the ear hearers that hear and do not obey when it comes to salvation are not saved. Only the heart hearers who respond are saved. This idea of quick obedience to God is very clear when we read about Paul's conversion in, I think it's the 22nd chapter of Acts. Like, he was traveling to do harm to Christians, and in the process of doing evil, God shined his light, the light of the gospel, on him, and he fell to the ground, and Jesus said, "Why are you persecuting me?" The answer was, "Well, who are you?" And Jesus introduced himself, and immediately the response from Paul is, "What do you want me to do, Lord?" There was no hesitation. It was light into his life and a very quick response. That is where I want to be, because there's no time lapse between receiving a light and responding to it. When we lag and weigh out the consequences and we procrastinate, we are hurting ourselves. A quick response, "What do you want me to do, Lord?" is the way that we should respond to light. So the question is, when we are granted light in our lives, what are we going to do with that? What will our response be? That involves heart hearing, the akuo type of hearing. If I may, I would like to give you an example from my life last week. I talked about not wanting to ever do anything that would detract from the gospel, that would bring a bad appearance to the gospel. Because God is faithful, He brought something to my mind instantly the next morning while I was in devotional time. And that was, I had made a financial agreement with a friend, not a believer, and it involved certain installments and payments. Now, things have been kind of tough because of the shutdown and lack of work, and so my not making and meeting those agreements was justified in my mind. I didn't really take it seriously. I used excuses. And being that He knew I was a believer, God said, "You are hurting the gospel by not keeping your word, by not doing everything you can to be faithful to your promise." So I could go no further until I sent a text to my friend and promised money quickly, which I followed up on, and I'm glad to say that I did it, and I feel very clear again in my relationship with God. And I say that just because that is an example of continually and faithfully trying to hear the voice of God in your life and responding quickly without hesitation. My response was to humble myself and be corrected and understand the way God felt about it. It doesn't matter how I feel about it. That's the way God feels about it, and that's what really matters. And so to close here, I want to read from Colossians again, chapter 1, 9 and 10. For this reason also, since the day we heard of it, we have not ceased to pray for you and to ask you that you be filled with the knowledge of His will, in all spiritual wisdom and understanding, so that you may walk in a manner worthy of the Lord, to please Him in all respects, bearing good fruit and increasing in the knowledge of God. So that's what we're talking about. Knowing and then walking it out in obedience in bearing fruit. Thanks for listening. This is Devotions with Daryl, and I will see you next week. I love you.